Our victory in Tunisia, greeted by those to whom it brought the dignity of freedom, meant that an entire continent was now liberated. The flowers with which our soldiers were garlanded, the bells which rang their joyful peals, were a sign of men and women's relief that the yoke had begun to be lifted, that liberty and sanity were returning, and that the first stage of the Allied task was ended. It was in Washington that the North African campaign was planned by Mr. Churchill and President Roosevelt. The date was June 1942, a time when the war outlook was dark. In the Western Desert, we had lost Tobruk, crossed the Egyptian frontier, and were rapidly falling back to El Alamein. In Russia, Hitler had begun his drive aimed at the Caucasus with its oil and at the envelopment of Moscow by way of Stalingrad. The success of both or either of these thrusts would have imperiled the entire Middle East and Persia beyond, with its oil supply and its route to Russia by the Persian Gulf. Moreover, India would have been in danger on both frontiers, from the Nazis in the west, at a time when the eastern frontier was threatened by the Japanese from the east. At sea, our resources were stretched to the uttermost. In the Atlantic, our lifeline was being attacked by U-boats in packs of 20. To Archangel and Murmansk, our convoys fought through days of battle. The Mediterranean was almost closed by reason of enemy airfields on both shores. Malta was maintained by the Royal and Merchant Navies and the Royal Air Force only at heavy cost. To the Middle East and India, our only route was via the Cape, a journey of 12,000 miles, equal to going halfway round the world. The two main tasks that confronted Mr. Churchill and President Roosevelt were to maintain our bases intact, Britain, Middle East, India, and to ease the burden on Russia by striking fresh blows in the West. But until the Mediterranean was open to our ships and Africa was freed, our blows would have neither the strength nor freedom of movement needed. Those two imperatives could be achieved only by capturing the airfields from Alexandria to Algiers. That done, the Mediterranean would be under our control. One ship direct to Suez would do the work of two round the Cape, and the springboard for Europe's invasion would be ready. First, the freeing of Africa. Second, into Europe. Those were the Washington decisions. After 4 months of day and night work, by chiefs of staff, by heads of Army, Navy, Air Force and War Transport in London and Washington, by ministries of supply and food in both countries, by millions of munitions workers and shipbuilders, the weapons and material for the new campaign were rushing to the ports and harbors of Britain and America, where the ships were assembling. The greatest combined operation in history was being shaped, and secrecy was imperative. Nobody in the ports knew the ship's destinations. Ships had to be altered for the job. Davits changed from boats to landing craft. Telephones fitted from bridge to sally ports. Cargo liners were made ready to carry troops, and most of the ships needed additional armament for defense against enemy aircraft. More powerful derricks were fixed so that each vessel could handle her own cargo.